In Syria, the regime is reported to have targeted at least 20 rebel positions in eastern Ghouta. It's on the outskirts of Damascus. According to pro-regime media, opposition fighters were bombarded by artillery and airstrikes. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says 4 rebels and 2 civilians were killed, including a child. Rebels have controlled eastern Ghouta since 2012. Meanwhile, the Turkish military says it's advancing towards al-Bab with Syrian rebels. Airstrikes and fighting on the ground have killed 58 Daesh fighters in the area. It comes as Syrian regime forces and their allies have gained more ground against Daesh in the area. According to monitors, the regime's latest advance has cut off a supply route between al-Bab and the terror group's strongholds in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor. Well, Iolo Dayfdd has more now from the Turkey-Syria border. He joins us live. Iolo, can you just talk us through then the latest developments in and around al-Bab?
Yes, al-Bab city is roughly 40 kilometers to the northeast of Aleppo. So what's happening essentially, and has been happening for the last week or so, is this pincer movement by the Syrian regime coming in from Aleppo, but also, of course, the Turkish forces and the Free Syrian Army, the FSA, coming in from the north. So over the last 24 hours, 2 locations, strategic locations, from what we understand, a hill and a bridge, have been taken by the FSA and the Turkish military at a cost. There have been 2 deaths by the Turkish military. There have been many people, many of the soldiers have been injured as well. We don't know how many Turkish soldiers or FSA fighters are actually involved in the fighting. They're keeping that under wraps. But obviously, this has been a severe bout of fighting for a number of months now. And in the last week or so, there's been an escalation. It has intensified simply because the Syrian regime are also getting closer from a different direction. So that's how it stands at the moment. And al-Bab is seen to be crucial strategically because it opens up that route further south, as you mentioned, to where Daesh have their headquarters in Syria, in Raqqa.
Are we beginning to see, Iolo, a broader coalition form here in the fight against Daesh?
It certainly feels like it, doesn't it? Because there are so many international forces now as part of a very fractious war, civil war in Syria. You have Iranian and Hezbollah fighters with Syria, with the Syrian regime. You have Turkish soldiers, you have Russian artillery, Russian airstrikes, and all this has been taking place in the last few days. And they've been targeting not just al-Bab, of course. There have been other targets in Idlib, Damascus, as you mentioned, and trying to confirm who is behind the certain airstrikes in certain parts of Syria is actually very difficult. And why are certain targets being looked at? We do know from the Russian High Command, from Lieutenant General Sergei Rutskoy, when he was speaking earlier, he said that over 4,600 targets, Daesh targets, have now been hit in 2017 alone. So they have intensified and escalated. And we know also that there is cooperation between the Turkish forces and the Russian airstrikes. How much that is happening and shaping the future of al-Bab, we don't know. And we don't know even if there's how much cooperation there is on the ground between the various factions, because the Syrian regime sees any armed group in Syria as being terrorist, whereas the Turkish armed forces are working and cooperating with the FSA. Meanwhile, just out of the picture at the moment is the SDF and the YPG, the Kurdish militias. So it is a very difficult and a very complex picture, but obviously, according to the Russians at least, they are stepping up their airstrikes.
Okay, Iolo, thank you.